I finished my primary school in China, and then I went to Australia, and I went from the last year in the primary school to high school, and then I went to university in Australia. And then after I become an architect, I went back to work in Hong Kong, and that's when I started studying Feng Shui. That mainly because we had a job in Hong Kong to do a hospital. We won a design competition, but when we got to Hong Kong, everybody protested, because the hospital looked like a couple of tombstones, and so they say it was bad Feng Shui, and we have to redesign the hospital so it's a low-rise building, So I find that fascinating because I never thought that the British government would be stopped by something like Feng Shui. So I was curious, and I thought, oh, I should really study this, to see what it is to make it so, so different, so powerful in a sense, because the social action stopped the government, And fortunately, I met my first teacher, Master Ren, and he was very good. He taught me the basics of Feng Shui. And you can see the painting behind you. He gave me the calligraphy when I finished, and he gave me his compass, and he gave me his manuscript. So obviously he had a feeling that I would use Feng Shui in the long term. But I did not use Feng Shui for another 10 years, because when I went back to Australia, nobody knew what Feng Shui is, and there was no demand for it. And then in Australia, they started taking, they had what they call business migration. So you have a certain amount of money, you can come to Australia. So many Chinese started coming in Australia, and they have to invest money in Australia. And then I got onto a couple of migration experts, and they collect Chinese money and they do projects. And then I started doing projects for them. And I run into problem because every time I do a project, everything is okay, go ahead. And then just before it gets built, right, when everything's done, all the design's done, the clients would send the drawing back to Hong Kong and get checked by the Feng Shui experts and come back with all these changes, and it, cost us a lot of money in terms of architecture because we basically had to redraw, redesign all the things. So I thought, okay, I know Feng Shui, I dig out all the stuff and then I apply the Feng Shui into my architecture,
But did you see that it also worked?
Yeah, it's actually worked. It actually worked better because, with Feng Shui, we put the human being in the center of the equation. So very often it's user-friendly and user-orientated, whereas with normal architecture, we tend to carry away by how the building looks and, the aesthetic of it. And sometimes, very often, the architect got their own, agendas. They like a certain look and certain design, certain trend, certain style. They want to copy someone's work, and so they go for it without actually thinking about the relevant people and the relevant situation, And I think architects still do this all the time, and I think that's why Feng Shui is still very popular, because for a customer, for a user, he's got nowhere to complain, Where do you complain if you don't like the architect's work, But with the Feng Shui consultant, there's somewhere to go. You say, oh, look, I don't like this, can you have a look at the Feng Shui, And then, the Feng Shui consultant gives a different perspective, and then the client take it drawing back to the architect, say, look, my Feng Shui expert says this, and then they have to re-examine it. And this is really what my clients do, because basically they're looking for a second opinion, someone looking from the situation with a different angle. Sometimes they don't like a design, but they don't have the confidence or the ability to say why they don't like something, And a Feng Shui expert helps them to solve this problem, because they look at it and say, oh, why don't you like it? And they look at it, and then they've come up with some different way of looking at the stuff. And a good one, when you take it back to the architect, it usually makes sense to them, and they change it. Because I'm an architect myself, so I'm very much aware of that situation, And I always trying to explain to the architect that both the architect and myself want the best thing for the client. So the client is the thing we're looking at. And what I'm looking at is from a special angle, right? The architect been looking at the problem from a different angle. The Feng Shui consultant look at it from a different angle. And when we see the problem, what we're trying to do is trying to rectify it so we serve the client best. So I always trying to explain to the architect why I suggest something or why I say something, And then most important thing is that you don't pick up the pencil and do this design for them, right? You allow the architect to redesign, right? So the idea still come from him. We basically just point out what the issues are. Never go and do the design for the architect. That's the worst thing you could do. Matter of fact, you could say Feng Shui is Chinese way of doing architecture and planning. Okay. You got to bear in mind that throughout Chinese history, right, there was no planning code, there was no, building rules, Yet the Chinese city, Chinese town, the Chinese building, they have a sense of harmony and a sense of place. And this is because everybody understood the rules of Feng Shui, whether openly or hidden, right? They all work towards that same kind of rule, which is harmony with your environment. This I think is where my specialty lies, because I have a foot on both cultures, so I see myself as a bridge between the two cultures, two way of doing things. And because I'm Chinese architect, so I come from the West, right? But I also study Feng Shui, which means I come from the East, right? And I'm trying to integrate the East and West, and trying to see both point of view. So it's really a comparative study of the environment, looking from East and West point of view.
So, but what's the specialty or what's the chance of combining those two ways?
Well, I think you produce an architecture or planning that is more holistic, we in the West tend to look at things, we compartmentalize things. So even the environmentally friendly building, we talk about, being environmentally responsive, right? Okay, that's good, right? But you're only still talking about the earth chi. You orient a building the right orientation, you get the best out of the material and, conservation and better use. But you're still talking physical things, right? What the Chinese say was that in Feng Shui architecture, we also take the person into consideration. So it's humanly responsive as well. Not only environmental, but we say psychological and mentally responsive. But then on top of that, we said that there is a component of time and space, and everything's interconnected, right? So we're trying to look at all the interconnections. So people use the word spiritually responsive, but when I say spiritually responsive, we don't mean in a religious sense, but in a more holistic sense, is that in everything's interconnected, right? So we look at the interconnection of different things, Whereas in normal architecture, we look at it as a problem solving. We've got a problem, we've got to solve it, and we solve it only on the physical level, not on a psychological or spiritual level. And this is where I think the problem is, You can see all this architecture, like we got brand architectures now, like postmodern. Everybody does a certain postmodern. It's a style. It's a brand, Doesn't matter where you are. You can see a postmodern building in Spain, exactly the same as in America, exactly the same as France, in Germany. And you can see the brand architecture. Oh, this is by so-and-so famous architect, and I've got to have one of them. It has nothing to do with the people, nothing to do with the environment.